Stand on the ground of Karnak, and every guide will tell you the same story that you are standing in a temple nearly 2000 years in the making. One of the oldest continuously used religious site on earth. And that's true because in 19th century archaeologists digging through the grave terraces on the west bank of Thebes, the very ground beneath the Colossi of Memnon and the Valley of the King. Archaeologists pulled something out of the ground that has nothing to do with pharaohs. A hand axe, rough, teardrop shaped, chipped on both faces by hands that were not quite like yours or mine. Not a tool made by ancient Egyptians, a tool made by hominins who walked this exact stretch of the Nile hundreds of thousands of years before the word Egypt meant anything at all. So here's the real question this video is going to answer. Before there was Pharaoh, before there was writing, before there was even a settled human species walking upright the way we do, who was already living, hunting, and napping stone on the ground that would one day become the most powerful city on earth. To understand what that hand axe means, you have to zoom out much further than Pharaoh's Egypt, all the way back to East Africa. Roughly 2 million years ago, where a new kind of hominins was emerging. Homo erectus, taller, more heavily built, and dramatically more capable than anything that came before it. Homo erectus is widely credited as the first hominins to leave Africa entirely, spreading across Asia and eventually part of Europe, carrying with it a revolutionary stone tool tradition known as the Acheulean industry. Large, deliberately shaped, teardrop shaped hand axe and clevers, a technology so effective and so stable that it remained in continuous use, essentially unchanged in its basic form, for well over a million years. This is almost impossible to comprehend from where we sit today, in a species that reinvests in its phone every 12 months. For a million years, hand axe was cutting edge technology, and it never need a replacement. But how did Homo erectus and the hominin population that followed actually move out of East Africa and into places like Egypt? The answer is hidden within the landscape itself. Today we picture the Sahara as one continent, lifeless ocean of sand. But climate science has revealed something extraordinary. The Sahara has flickered between desert and lush green savanna many times over the past several hundred thousands of years, in cycle now called African humid period, driven by long, slow wobble in the Earth's orbit. And during this green window, the Sahara filled with lakes, rivers, grassland, and the animals that go with them, like giraffe, hippos, and elephant, creating temporary highways that hominins and later fully modern humans could walk straight through them, from the East Africa heartland toward the Mediterranean and the Levant beyond. The Nile Valley sat at the eastern edge of this system, a permanent, reliable ribbon of water even when the surrounding desert dried out again, which made it not just a highway, but a refuge, a place population could retreat to and persist in during the dry centuries in between. And that combination, a corridor that opened and closed, fading into a river that never truly failed, it exactly by the Nile Valley, and within it, the stretch of riverbank that would one day be called Thebes. Let's go back to that hand axe. Along the Nile Valley, ancient river trenches, old footprint left standard above the modern river as it slowly cut its channel deeper over hundreds of thousands of years. Preserve a rough timeline of stone tool technology, almost like the tree ring, with the oldest, highest trenches holding the earliest tools and the lowest trenches holding the most recent. Archaeologists surveying 19th century Egypt found early Auckland hand axe preserved in exactly this kind of high, ancient terrain gravel on the west bank at Thebes, alongside similar finds near Abyssinia close to modern Cairo. These were not isolated flukes. They represent a widespread scattershot of evidence showing that lower Paleolithic hominins, almost certain Homo erectus or closely related population, were repeatedly present in the Thebes stretch of the Nile Valley, likely returning again and again over an immense span of time to hunt, to butcher game, and to nab the distinctive teardrop shape by face that defined their toolkit. Now picture it. No temple, no river cruise, no column rising from the plain. Just a wide, marshy floodplain, herd of non-extinct game moving along its edge. And a small band of hominins working stone into blade sharp enough to open a hippo carcass. Or the exact patch of desert where hundreds of thousands of years later, worker would drag a stone from Aswan to build a hypothetical hall. And now, let's fast forward to an unfathomable stretch of time and travel just a short distance north from Thebes toward the modern town of Kina, near the ancient temple of Dendera, and you arrive at a low, unassuming landform called Taramsa Hill. It does not look like much, but Taramsa was for hundreds of thousands of years on and off a working quarry, a place where hominins and later fully modern human dug pit and trenches into the hillside to extract dirt, the fine-grained stone idea for napping sharp blades and points. In 1994, Belgian archaeologists excavated at Taramsa made a discovery that sent a genuine jolt through the field of human origin research. The skeleton of a young child, deliberately buried directly against the quarry extraction debris, anatomically modern in nearly every measurable way. The dating techniques applied to the surrounding place the burial somewhere between roughly 80,000 and 50,000 years old, with a working estimate roughly 55,000 years. That makes the Taramsat child one of the oldest, and possibly the very oldest, deliberate human burial ever identified on the entire African continent. But the question is, why does that matter so much? Because the Nile Valley is widely considered the single most likely corridor modern humans used as they dispersed out of Africa into Asia, Europe, and eventually the rest of the world. And yet, for decades, researchers had almost no skeleton evidence from this exact corridor to actually test that theory against. But the discovery of Taramsa child changed that. A single small skeleton buried with apparent care beside a stone quarry, a short walk from where Thebes would one day rise, become one of the clearest physical confirmation that anatomically modern humans were living, working, and burying their dead in the Egyptian Nile Valley, tens of thousands of years before a single stone of Karnak was cut. If we continue little further towards the north, near the modern town of Sohag, you will reach another site that pushes this story even further into focus. Nazlet Khater. In 1980, archaeologists uncovered a nearly complete skeleton, a young adult male now known as Nazlet Khater II, dated to somewhere between 35,000 and 40,000 years old, making it, at the time of discovery, the oldest, largest complete modern human skeleton found anywhere in Africa. What makes Nazlet Khater even more remarkable isn't the skeleton itself, but what it was found next to. The remains of systematic underground chert mining operation, complete with excavation shafts and galleries dug specifically to reach high quality stone below the surface. This was an opportunistic scavenging of surface rock. This was organized, repeated, purposeful extraction, arguably one of the earliest known examples of true mining behavior anywhere in the human archaeological record, tens of thousands of years before anyone would think to mine gold in Nubia or quarry limestone for a temple pylon. The people of Nazlet Khater were, in the most literate sense, possibly Egyptian first miners. The story does not end with Nazlet Khater minor. As the last ice age loosened its grip and the climate kept shifting, communities scattered along the Nile Valley, including sites within striking distance of where Thebes would eventually rise, developed increasingly specialized way of living off the river itself. At sites like Wadi Khubaniya, near modern Aswan, archaeologists have recovered stone grinding tools dating back roughly 18,000 years, alongside evidence that people were processing wild food plant, tubers, and grains long before anyone had domesticated a single crop. Some of the earliest known evidence of intensive plant food processing anywhere on Earth. Elsewhere along the valley, distant regional stone tools tradition that archaeologists label the Sibyllian and Cilician industries show increasingly fine, specialized blade and microliths used for fishing, foaling, and harvesting wild grasses. None of these people were farmers yet, but what they were doing is exactly what a farmer would eventually do, processing plant food on a large scale, exploiting the river resources with real precision, and settling at least seasonally in the same stretch of riverbank generation after generation. The line between forager and farmer, it turned out, is far blurrier and far older than most people would ever imagine. So, before there was a single pharaoh, before there was a single hieroglyphs carved into stone, this stretch of the Nile Valley was already ancient in the truest sense of the word. Homo erectus hunter nabbed hand axe on the very ground beneath the Colossi of Memnon. A child was laid to rest beside a stone quarry near Dendera. 60,000 years before Hatshepsut ever built her own temple into a cliff face a few kilometers away. And a young miner near Sohag dug underground shaft for Chet, tens of thousands of years before anyone would dig underground for a Pharaoh's tomb. None of these people had any concept of Egypt, of Thebes, of Amun-Ra. And yet, generation after generation, in slow unbroken succession, their descendants never really left. They just kept adapting, right up until the moment thousands of years later, when adaptation turned into something new entirely. Farming, village, chiefdoms, and finally city. How did a landscape of hand axe and stone quarry become the launch pad for one of the richest civilizations in human history? That transformation from Fring to Pharaoh is exactly where we'll pick up next in part 2. Subscribe so that you don't miss it. Until then, be curious and keep questioning with history under the cap.